So today I'm going to be discussing the main differences between an automatic and a manual transmission in your Chevrolet Cruze. So let's get started. So this particular vehicle is my own personal daily driver. You may have seen my other review about owning this vehicle for 2.5 years. Well, now it's a little past that. It's almost 3 years. So I know a 6-speed manual in this model vehicle very well. So when discussing automatic versus manual transmissions for the Cruze, it's important to know the differences as far as models and the options available for transmissions. So to start things off, for options, the lowest trim models for the Cruze are a L and LS model. They come with a 1.8 liter turbo and are offered in either an auto or a manual. Now the automatic transmission, there was two options for it. There was a 6T30 and a 6T40, both being 6-speed auto transmissions. Those give an EPA estimated 22 miles per gallon city and 35 mile per gallon highway. So when discussing the differences between an auto and a manual, it's important to note the EPA estimations, the differences in miles per gallon. So that same particular model, 1.8 liter L or LS trim levels, backed by a 6-speed manual transmission, this time being an M32 transmission, gets a slight increase of 25 city, 36 highway. So the base models with the 1.8 naturally aspirated motor, the miles per gallon are more favorable for the 6-speed manual. You get an increase of 3 miles per gallon city and 1 mile per gallon increase highway. So that's for the L and the LS models. Now this particular vehicle is a LT. So for the LT, 2LT, and the LTZ, you have a 6T40 automatic transmission across all models, right there. And then the manual is also an M32 6-speed manual, but with that being said, the LTZ, the fully loaded model, does not have an option to get a manual, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. So believe it or not, as far as EPA estimations across the LT, the 2LT, and the LTZ across all transmissions, auto and manual, they have the exact same rating of 26 city and 38 highway. So in comparison, the 1.8 liter, the base models, to the mid to high level models with the 1.4, you automatically get an increase in MPGs. And then for the lower models, you get an increase in MPGs going from an auto to a manual, so it's more beneficial to get a manual. And then for the mid-range to high-level models, it doesn't matter. They all have the exact same EPA estimated rating. Now there are some other optional models. You have a diesel model. I'm not entirely sure the transmission for that, but it is only offered in an automatic. And then also you have the eco models, which comes with an auto or a manual. Now the transmissions for that, I do not know the technical aspects of it, so if you know, please by all means comment. But I know there is some different gearing, some different tuning. That way they get better MPGs. So I don't think it's an M32, but it is offered in a 6-speed auto and a 6-speed manual. Now for ratings for the eco, the auto gets 26 rated city and gets 39 highway. Now for the manual, it gets 28 city and 42 highway. So much like the base model or the lesser models, where the manual is more beneficial, for the eco models, the manual is also more efficient. You actually get a 2 mile per gallon increase in the city, and then you'll get a 3 mile per gallon increase on the highway. So as a brief recap, as far as trim models go, the L in the LS with the 1.8 naturally aspirated motor, it's more beneficial to get the manual. The mid-range models, the LT, 2LT, LTZ, doesn't matter whether you get an auto or a manual. They have the exact same EPA estimated rating. The diesel, I'm not entirely sure the rating. I'm pretty certain or fairly certain that it's better than all of the previously mentioned. And then you have the eco models, the auto or the manual, which of course the manual, you get a little better rating. So now to kind of talk about the pros and the cons. The pros for the manual transmission in this particular vehicle is the fact that it's so easy to drive. I feel like it's a very good vehicle for a first-time stick shift driver to pick up and go. I mean, it's very easy to drive. Why? Well, the main thing being the clutch. I've driven a lot of vehicles and the clutch seems to be very heavy, especially in older vehicles. And then if anybody ever increases the horsepower, of course, you need a heavier clutch, so on and so forth. But anyways, stock for stock, this is the lightest clutch I have ever driven in a vehicle. I mean, you can literally take 2 fingers and push the clutch in. That's how light this vehicle is as far as the clutch goes. Now, with that being said, it's also nice because when you're sitting on a hill, I mean, that's a common occurrence when you're driving a stick shift vehicle. You're at a light, you're stuck on a hill, whatever, or for whatever reason, and, you know, you have to, I mean, you don't have to, but I prefer to have the clutch out a little bit and then the gas down a little bit, and you're kind of that balancing act. Well, this vehicle, it's like you almost don't even need the gas. You get on a hill and you just let off the clutch a little bit and it actually just stays in place. So you don't have to worry about that balancing act. So that also helps a new driver when they're learning how to drive stick, because they get stuck on a hill and they're, you know, kind of worried about it. Well, really all they have to do is just let out on the clutch a little bit and a car will do the rest of the work for you. What else is nice is GM's been doing this for a while, is the reverse lockouts. You might not be able to pick it up on the camera, and obviously I'm not going to throw it in reverse doing 45 miles an hour, but the reverse lockout is very nice because on this particular vehicle, it's a pretty standard pattern as far as shift pattern goes. You have reverse all the way to the left, and then first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So when you're driving and you're shifting down gears coming to a stop, if they didn't have that reverse lockout, it'd be very easy to accidentally throw it in reverse as you're moving forward and to pretty much destroy your transmission. So the reverse lockout is a simple thing, but it's very nice that they do it. Now, as far as the automatic goes, the pros of it, it's very awesome in the city. Just like any other transmission that's automatic, you just throw it in drive and you go. Now the thing is with the Chevy Cruze, it has a, I don't know if it's technically called this, but it's a learning transmission. I don't know if that's a slang term for it, but basically it picks up on your driving style and adapts to you. So if you're constantly flooring the car wherever you go, it adapts to that. So that's kind of rolls into a con also, because some people complain about the driving style and the hard shifts and whatever else. It just, the transmission doesn't seem right. Well, it adapts to your driving style. So if you're driving kind of like a jack wagon, well, guess what's going to happen? The car's going to learn your shift patterns and adapt to you. What's nice about the automatic transmission, I don't think I've mentioned it, but it is a column shift. I've always been a fan of the column shifts. And then it also, when you put it all the way back in drive, if you kick it over to the left, you have the manual options to where it's kind of like a slapstick, which is pretty cool. It's kind of like driving a manual without the clutch. So some people prefer that. It doesn't really bother me either way, whether it's there or not. I'm not going to use it. There is not any paddle shifters, so it is only the slapstick. Now, as far as cons go for the manual transmission, I think the number one con I'd have to say is it's kind of brutal to drive this vehicle in the city day in and day out. First through 4, the gears are just so short, so you're constantly shifting. And it almost becomes a burden. So if you're just driving the vehicle on the highway, it wouldn't be so bad. But honestly, if you're using it as a highway commuter, then you might as well go with the Eco model. Now, that's where the automatic kind of takes over. Is the city driving, is where you just throw it and drive and you go. But going back to the manual, and I think it has to do with just the way it's set up. So the con, I guess I should just kind of get right to it, right? It just seems like the whole transmission or the linkage system is just so notchy. I mean, there's so much play. I mean, if you can pick it up here on the camera, I mean, there's well over an inch of travel left and right, side to side when it's in gear. So it makes it sometimes a little difficult to find the gear. So if you're just a little bit off, it's almost like, seriously, it's like hitting a brick wall. It's not going to go in until you force it in. But of course, after a while, you learn it. You learn the shift pattern, and it comes easier. But it's still, I mean, I wish, that there's no excuse. There's this much play in the shifter. And I mean, this is in 4th gear. It's ridiculous. So the reason behind that is, I think it's because the engine and the transmission, they're not linear, meaning that like an older style vehicle, you have the engine, same direction, parallel with the vehicle, and then the transmission right here in the center tunnel. Well, that's on a rear-wheel drive vehicle, sometimes even all-wheel drive. Whereas this vehicle being a front wheel, you have it perpendicular, you have the engine sideways, and the transmission up front. So you have that distance between them. So you have the transmission, you have a push and pull cable that come to this console, and then you have, a whole series of different moving parts that just leave too much room for play. So if I don't know if it's something as simple as changing the bushings or what, but in a nutshell, there's a lot of moving parts, and unfortunately, it creates a lot of play. It's pretty annoying. Another con to this transmission is the fact that as a daily driver, obviously at some point you're going to have to merge onto the highway. Well, to do so, this car's already a pig. It has a very tiny motor, a 1.4 liter. Whether it's turboed or not, it's still pretty freaking slow. It's a heavy car. I want to say it's like 165 horsepower it's rated at. I can't remember offhand, but I mean, it's not that spectacular. So as you're merging onto the highway, I mean, you really have to pick the RPMs up. Now, the sweet spot for the transmissions is right around 2,500 RPM. It has a shift light. The shift light will come on probably around 1,000, 1,500 RPM. Well, I definitely advise against that if you're trying to get the vehicle to go anywhere in a decent amount of time. But you're trying to merge onto the highway, you're going to really have to peg out the RPMs to pick up speed. Highways around here are 65, 70 miles an hour, so I'm coming off of a road that's possibly 40 miles an hour, 35, and I got to get up, speed that quick. So I got to peg out the RPM. So I find myself shifting around 3,000, 3,500 RPM, and I've done it as far as 4,500 RPM. So sometimes the weirdest thing is when I'm shifting somewhere between 3,500 and 4,500, it wants to grind. Now you're probably saying, well, you're never supposed to get up that high, blah, blah, blah. I get it. You're not. But I'm not trying to die on the highway also. So I've tried a couple different things. My previous cars, I've been able to kind of quick shift pretty quickly and this one, it definitely does not like that. So what I've tried to is when I'm at that higher RPM merging, to kind of put in the clutch and slowly shift, slowly let off the clutch. But even then, it seems like it wants to grind. So it's very weird. Now, granted, this could be an abnormal case. It could be something with the vehicle in general. But I have driven other models with the same transmission. Actually, the Cruze, or not the Cruze, because I'm reviewing this one, but actually the Sonic, that has the exact same M32 transmission, and it had the exact same problem. So outside of those particular pros and cons, as a quick recap, the base models, the L, the LS with the 1.8 motors, more beneficial to get the manual. The mid-trim models to higher models, LT through the LTZ, doesn't matter, auto or manual, you get the same EPA estimations. And then the Eco with the manual, you get better miles per gallon. So obviously, realistically, it depends on your driving style. EPA says one thing. Well, let's face it, it's kind of hard to get the EPA estimations realistically because there's so many different factors involved. And whenever they do that, it's in a controlled environment. So even though EPA says something, let's be real, it's going to be different. So in a nutshell, I honestly don't think it really makes a difference between an automatic or manual. If you're truly looking for the best mile per gallon vehicle, you're not going to be looking for a Chevy Cruze. It's a smaller, compact car. It's more versatile in the city than it is kind of on the highway. So I don't think it really makes a difference. So if you're looking at this video and you're trying to decide manual or automatic for drivability as far as daily driver, even though I love my manual vehicles, hands down, if I had to do it again, I would get an automatic transmission. Now, I love manual transmissions. I'm a heavy believer that, the only real transmission is a manual, but as far as a daily driver, it's just almost too daunting to drive this vehicle with a 6-speed manual. So if I had a recommendation, definitely test drive both models. As far as reliability goes, I don't think one's going to be more reliable than another. I say strictly go for comfortability. If you're doing more city driving, get the automatic. If you're doing more highway driving, then I'd probably say the manual. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or corrections, maybe I missed something or I said something wrong, by all means, comment it away. If I offend you, well, I really don't care, but comment anyways. So I thank you for watching. Hopefully, if anything, you learned something and it may have swayed you in one way or another. So with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.